Greta, I think is the name.
Are you going to be here for the development meetings? Oh. I think
She may or may not.
Got
For
a
Monday?
Gia, but no Greta.
Okay. Okay.
We're going as far as really sentence.
Whatever you. On the sledge.
Yep, so it's the, I was thinking, wait, it's the start of your trip.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Corey is doing it as the back.
Where's she going?
But she didn't say this was usually.
Oh.
Okay, they're spending, but the previous model, so I'm gonna fly over to Wednesday, skateboard. That will come in, so it's so that.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you?
Okay.
I think we're ready to get started, everybody. So good evening. We're recording, right? Good evening. I'm Eric Berkey. I'm a member of the Planning Commission. I'm definitely not Devanshi Patel, but we are tag teaming, co-chairing this LRPC. So what we're going to do tonight, I think everybody kind of knows. I'm going to read my little spiel here. We'll do some introductions, and then we're going to get into staff and app presentations. So again, welcome to the LRPC, the Long Range Planning Committee subgroup meeting for the 12th Street Landing project. We are holding a hybrid public meeting, which enables remote electronic participation as legally authorized by the Code of Virginia, per the Planning Commission's electronic meeting policy adopted on July 7. Members of this LRPC subgroup are participating both here in person and virtually through electronic means. So a couple things. I think most folks know these issues with our hybrid environment. Members of the public may attend the meeting here in person or electronically by using the Microsoft Teams link provided on the LRPC webpage, the project website, the county's events calendar, and email notification that went out to LRPC email subscribers. There's a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. For subgroup members joining virtually, if anyone loses internet connectivity during tonight's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. Please keep your phones and devices muted until you're called upon. Please turn off sound to any devices around you to minimize interference. And if you could, in the chat, let us know if you're an LRPC member and your affiliated organization. That would be appreciated. Also, I think we're just automatically, if you keep your video and audio off until you're called upon, that would be appreciated. The meeting chat is active for two purposes. It's for LRPC subgroup members who need technical assistance and for members of the public who'd like to add their names to the list for public comment, which will be taken at the end of the meeting. I'm always a big fan of making sure that we have time for public comment, so we're going to reserve about 10 minutes if we can at the end. Teams chat should not be used for discussion. So if you're planning to provide public comment, please let us know, but otherwise don't do so in the chat because all public comments must be shared verbally for the recording so that if anybody wants to come and watch this later, they see what happened at the meeting and what was discussed. If you are participating virtually tonight and would like to be recognized to speak on an item, please just turn your video feed on and raise your virtual hand in Teams, and I will do my best along with Pierre here to monitor that and make sure that we're getting folks on Teams as well as in the room. If you're participating by phone without the video option, please just announce your name and group that you're representing when we go around here in a second. And I'm going to make my best effort to verbally check in and just make sure that folks who are on the phone have the opportunity to participate, assuming you are a subgroup member. I think that's it. So we are aiming to have public comment at the end of the meeting. We're going to determine to see how many folks want to provide public comment and how much time we have left, and as much time as I can provide per person, I will do so. If you'd like to speak, please enter your name in the chat, like I said, and then you will be added to the speaker list. Again, it's a public forum, and tonight's meeting is being recorded. It will be posted to the county website, and all information associated with our meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. Excellent. All right, got through it. Yes, thank you. So we'll do what we always do, which is we're going to go around the room, and then I'll call on folks virtually who are members of the LRPC subgroup. So again, my name is Eric Berkey. I'm a member of the Planning Commission. So we'll go around the table. If members of county staff could also introduce themselves, and then folks who are here with the applicant as well, introduce yourselves as well. So I'll throw it to Peter.
Oh, okay. Peter Schultz with the Planning Division.
Kendra Whitmore, I'm with Venable representing the applicants.
I am Brian Pilot with Studios Architecture here on behalf of the
Olympia with Studios Architecture.
Tony Steiner, I'm here with the Planning Commission.
Jim Lantelme, Planning Commission.
Adam Watson, Arlington County Planning.
Joanne Gabor, DES.
Peter Robertson, Planning Commission.
Gary Simmons, Park and Rec Commission and the Forestry and Natural Resource Commission.
David Howell, Forestry and Natural Resources.
Yvette Heim, Pedestrian Budget.
Dick Jacoby, Aurora Highlands Civic Association.
Jeff Williams, Arlington Ridge Civic Association.
Great. And then folks who are attending virtually, if you're a member of the LRPC subgroup, please introduce yourself now. Oh, yeah.
Ben Devanzo, Crystal, Pentagon City Review Council.
Anyone else was Judy Freshman? Judy Freshman is there. We should allow Judy.
Judy's online.
What? Why are we doing this, Judy?
Okay, not hearing anybody online. I neglected more folks in the room. If you folks can introduce yourselves.
I'm Dan Van Pelt with Grove Slate with a transportation consultant working with the applicant.
Augustus Haney, I'm from John Lisensky, Bowman Consulting with the applicant.
And if anybody joins online, then we'll get them then. So at this point, I think we're ready for that presentation.
Thank you. We've had tonight's agenda up here. What tonight's subject is going to be transportation phasing community benefits, and hopefully this will be the second and final LRPC meeting for this 12th Street Landing Brookfield TSA redevelopment project. And my colleague Joanne Gabor will be giving the transportation section, but first just a reminder just to have here our Pentagon City sector plan guiding principles. Transportation items. So I'll change the slide for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Peter, do you mind closing out of the preview version?
How do I?
I think you just minus it at the top. Up on the left, top right hand corner. Minus.
You go to full
You
screen.
go to your windows down at the bottom. For PowerPoint. There you go, middle one. Huh,
Easel at the bottom.
that's interesting.
Try, Peter, at the bottom, try the full, now in the middle. So at the bottom of your PowerPoint, the right's the slider for go to the left one, go to the left one. No. Right.
Why don't you just go?
Let me see it.
Oh, you're so close.
Yeah.
You can go down to the right. One over. No.
Over
Right
one
there.
icon.
Oh, no.
One icon to the right.
That one.
Oh, the screen icon.
That one.
Okay.
Might be the bear of that, if that's a different. Here.
Yeah, whatever is shown here is on. Yeah,
That's something else.
All right. Let me.
Try again.
Yeah.
All right, if we can.
I should have. It's actually easier to do it from my own.
It's counting against your presentation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk fast, don't worry. We're gonna talk about transportation tonight.
Okay.
We are gonna see slides about the sector plan here in a moment.
Share it. I'm just gonna do it like this. Yeah.
Looks good.
I'm just gonna do it like this, Joanne. Just.
Okay. Yeah, that looks good. Thank you, everyone. We are going to be talking about transportation tonight. What we are looking at here is a graphic on the right that shows what the sector plan shows. What you'll see is We do have existing streets on the southwest and east side of this property, which is South Hayes, South Fern, and 12th Street. Those are going to be maintained in their current location. We do have South Hayes Street that is designed to accommodate the transit station. Very large. South Hayes Street, there is going to be a transit stop, part of the ultimate transitway design. That will be, final design will be resolved during the final site plans. On 12th Street, we have a similar condition where the transitway is going to be along 12th Street. That final design will be resolved during final site plan. On South Fern Street, it is designated to provide bicycle facilities on the east side. There are improvements on the west side. There are improvements on the east side with the Penn Place development that we will have to coordinate with again when we do that final site plan. And 11th Street, for this sector plan, as you've seen here circled in red, this is going to be a new connection that is provided with this project. In the sector plan, it does talk about, because there is split property ownership to the north and south, we will not be able to realize the ultimate 11th Street design at this time. But with this project, we will be able to provide those vehicle and pedestrian accommodations from Fern to Hayes Street. A couple other things about this project is they will need to provide any signal improvements or upgrades that are needed to support the project per phase. This could be, signals, sidewalks, everything that we always typically think about for that transportation system. And then the service access should be located to minimize presence on the main pedestrian networks. That is from the sector plan. Our MTP also has guidance about making sure service entrances are not located on arterials. Again, that is something that will be finalized during final site plan, but that is where staff is right now. Next slide. So we're going to dive into the bicycle facilities here. This is a map that is from the sector plan. Again, our site, sorry, I didn't actually circle it here. Our site has the green diagonal line through it. Thank you, Peter. And so what you're looking at in the blue dash is where bicycle facilities are proposed. So again, you'll see those bicycle facilities on Fern Street, on 11th Street through the site. And then on Hayes Street, they're actually shown on the west side of Hayes Street. So that's not something that we would expect with this project. And again, with 11th Street, well, the ultimate condition does have a separate bicycle facility. During this interim phase, we will be looking for the bicycles to utilize that travel lane. There will be no bicycle facilities on 12th Street because that is for the transitway. And that is where we are with the bicycles. And again, a lot of this will be determined during final design what that looks like, but that is the goal in terms of providing the facilities. Next slide. So the green ribbon, I know we talked about this a little bit last time, but in terms of pedestrian flow and bicycle flow, I wanted to touch on that again. Again, it does go diagonally through the site. It is connecting from the southwest to northeast corners of the site. And this is intended as a path for pedestrians and also for slow moving bicycles to get through the site. So again, if you're commuting, if you're going 15, 20 miles an hour, this is not the intended path for you. This is something as you're getting through the site to the site, and you want to visit most likely, individuals in here. We are looking at that minimum 12-foot wide path. And we do have guidance along the sector plan for sidewalks along the arterial streets in this location. So 12th Street, you see we have a minimum 10-foot clear. 11th and Fern, we talk about a minimum 8-foot clear. And again, this is something that we can resolve during final site plan, but this is the minimums we will be looking for. Next slide. So this is talking about the transportation improvements. Again, just to talk about what the sector plan does have. What's circled in this red box basically talks about we are looking for this 12-foot easement along Fern Street to be provided for bicycle facilities. And then also the shared amenity along the northern property line, which is where 11th Street is. Next slide. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but suffice it to say what is shown in the red boxes is what does the sector plan does have in terms of looking for improvements along this site. So again, this is the guidance we are going to be using as we look at producing these PDSP conditions and guidelines and making sure it is in alignment with that from the sector plan. Next slide. And finally, talking about transportation from a phasing perspective. We are looking for each phase, whichever phase goes first, they will need to make sure that they accommodate all their loading, parking, and pickup drop-off operations that they need. And we will be looking for transportation improvements to make sure it accommodates whatever that phase is. So again, that may be yellow phase goes first. There may be improvements on the red area. If the red goes first, maybe the improvement in the blue area, et cetera, et cetera. So it is something from a site perspective. We want to make sure that those improvements are provided that will mitigate the proposed development. We also need to make sure that those improvements do tie to the existing conditions. Since we don't know the timing of each phase, we want to make sure we're not left with any sort of interim condition that ends up with a less than ideal transition for the sidewalks or subpar sidewalks, travel lanes, et cetera. And we also want to make sure we do have that pedestrian pathway through the site. So again, depending on which phase comes first, we will be looking to maintain some sort of pathway through the site. There is one that exists today. So it may not look like the green ribbon today in terms of layout, but we want to make sure that access is provided. Next slide.
So I think that's pretty much it for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Actually, this ties in nicely with the next segment, which is phasing. And in a situation like this, where a large development will be developing in land base like this, it's important to have the development with its commensurate improvements phased in a reasonable manner. And the developer has two different programs. We talked about this the last time, a baseline program and an alternative program, divided into three land base, which will probably be three separate phases of development. And now, since the January meeting, we have a clearer picture of the various public amenities that might come with each one of these improvements. The developer proposes to reuse the existing parking garage footprint. So that's one slight constraint in our reuse, but we do believe that the existing parking garage footprint is not going to preclude development of park and landscaping above it, since it currently does have some. The developer has indicated that 701, so the west side, is probably going to redevelop first. That building, we've been told, is almost entirely vacant, if not entirely vacant. And that will be an all residential phase. It's the other two phases that could be with an alternative program, hotel and office, depending on how the market works. The building at 601 12th Street, the developer stated to us, will probably remain longer. So what's going to happen here is that we are going to have a situation where probably this could develop, right away, whereas these two other phases will have to wait. And so we've talked with the developer about the various, and they will show you in their presentation how they propose to phase public, including interim phases, in order to at least provide some coherence to what's going on. So the very first phase, that land-based 701, or at least what we're assuming will be the most likely the first phase, we are expecting the public plaza at 12th and Hayes, a minimum of a half acre. A temporary public access easement, the developer will discuss that, through the 601 property using existing pathways on the site in order to go through the block. And the developer is going to develop west half of the interim new 11th Street. And the reason we keep calling it the interim 11th Street is it really depends on the DEA building, as Joanne's slide said, for the full width. But it will be a usable street when the developer develops the entire block here. Land-based 601A, which is the one on the northeast here, which could go second or third. They're going to provide a small public space, sort of a landing. They call it a node on Fern Street that is going to connect actually with the green ribbon that will come off of the Penn Place site. And hopefully sometime in the future, there will be some development movement on the Penn Place site. They're also then going to give us the east half of that interim 11th Street. And if developed first, it depends on which one, A or B, develops first. We will get the green ribbon with one of these phases. So there's no situation where we'll only get, for instance, half of a green ribbon or a partial green ribbon. So it depends on which ones. And same thing, community benefits will generally be phased too, as you know, the on-site affordable units. The sector plan calls for minimum of 10% of net new density would be on-site CAFs. And so that probably would be provided actually with the first phase of development, since that's going to be a primarily residential development. Now, the exact number and mix, we're not negotiating now. We will do that at the time of the site plan with the input of, our housing commission and our housing department as to what needs are needed at the time. The sector plan recommendation, the developer states they will comply with all these. So we are going to expect when a final site plan comes in, the green building for the sector plan recommendations. Public open spaces phased as they've generally suggested, and we are working on conditions where we'll set up the expectations of the public improvements at each phase. New 11th Street to break up the super block, the separated bike lane on Fern Street, and accommodating transportation improvements that will actually be made by others around the block. The developer will not be developing the transit way as part of this. That is a county initiated development, but we are negotiating with the developer for space for the transit way on 12th and Fern Streets. So again, staff analysis, I mean, the developer has, worked that they will meet the sector plan expectations for the community benefits. And as part of this PDSP approval, we also will have conditions setting up, again, the expectations for the community benefits, so that when they come in with a site plan for the commensurate phase, we kind of know what's coming already. Like I said, we won't know the exact mix of dwelling units, the number of bedrooms. That will be negotiated at the time, but we will know what kind of affordable housing program we expect. So our next step, this is the second LRPC meeting, and we're hoping this will be the last. Again, this is a high level look. It's, again, not a site plan review. The developer is going to have to submit detailed site plan for the site plan review committee review, and that could be later this year, perhaps. We will be going to the commissions sometime this spring, May, or June, for Planning Commission, Transportation Commission, and County Board hearings on this PDSP. And then once they have the approval of the sort of the density set for this block and the development expectations for this block, then they can submit a site plan. So, but we'll look forward to that either later this year or next year. So, thank you. Okay. Go to the applicant presentation.
Great, well, thank you. It's really wonderful to be here tonight. Have four things on our agenda. I'm going to do a quick recap of the LRPC 1 and some of the how we addressed the feedback that we heard in the last meeting. Dan Van Pelt's going to go through the transportation section. I'll jump back in to talk through the phasing and then kind of close this with the community benefits. So our first slide here, and this is what we presented at the LRPC 1. This is our proposed development program. And if you look to the upper right image, just want to remind everyone in those light gray volumes there, those aren't building footprints. Those are just our envelope limits as they meet the sector plan's goal for open space and the open space for the green ribbon. And then the two diagrams that you see at the bottom, those are two different program options of what are the darker gray volumes could be building tower elements that work within those envelope limits. One of the things that we heard in our first meeting was that north-south connection to the interim 11th Street. And if you go to the next one, that's something that we've incorporated here in that plan. So we have that north-south connection to the interim street. Next, Dan, you're going to jump in here.
I can do it, jump up the screen if that's okay. Better. Yep. I don't have a computer to point at, so Joanne had a very robust transportation presentation. So a lot of what our first slides are kind of there, but just to, I think you're all pretty familiar with the site, where the site is located. So we probably don't spend a whole lot of time on this, but a very, freeway access, transit access, bike access, pet access. So site's well connected to a number of those. And we'll talk a little bit more about the bike and transit in the next slides. But we're very close to the Pentagon City Metro Station, right at the corner. And we've got VRE about 0.7 of a mile away. And we'll also have a transportation management. Next slide, please. So from transit facility standpoint, there are 10 stops within a quarter mile of the site. You can see them listed here. Again, Pentagon City Metro stations there, VRE stations very close nearby. I think one of the things that's pretty important to the site is the transitway and how that impacts this site itself along 12th Street and then heading up Hayes. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I think that's one of the things definitely to point out as it relates to this site. Next slide, please. So the bike facilities, there's a number of existing bike facilities in the neighborhood already. There's 3 Capital Bike Share stations within a quarter mile. There's a number of planned bike facilities. I think most relevant to this site, there's the future protected bike lanes on Fern Street. So the northbound one, which would be part of the Penn Place project, the southbound, which would be part of on Fern, which would be part of this project. I think one of the things that is, we'll talk about on the next slide, we get there, a little bit of difference, I think, in terms of what we had assumed on Hayes, but that is, there's going to be a cycle track there. So less of a bike facility need to be thought about for this project and this design of this project on Hayes. And then there are a number of other really nice transportation features going to the neighborhood with the protected bike lanes on Eads and the future Arlington cycle track. Let's go on the next slide. Zooming down at the site level, this shows us a little bit closer in. So we can see those bike facilities. I think the one thing that Joanne talked about was on Hayes Street. This shows existing bike lanes, and this will be a future cycle track on the west side. So that's existing. We will have the future 11th Street, which will have its future bike facility on it. Won't be its ultimate condition with this project, but there will be ultimate bike facility on that corridor, and then the southbound bike lane on Fern. And we have our the green ribbon that runs through the site, which is the dashed orange there. So next slide. So getting a little bit tighter and thinking about access into the site, we have talked about the transitway on 12th Street, the transitway on Hayes Street, and just a concentration of pedestrian activity that's going to happen because of that transitway and because of the metro station that's just down in our southwest corner. So we know from a functional standpoint, we do not want access on 12th. We do not want access on Hayes Street. We've got almost 1.8 million square feet of development here that needs to have access. We got to get parking serviced, and we need to have the building serviced with loading. So 11th Street is where that has been identified for parking. That's where all the parking access will be. But we've got to serve all these buildings too. We got to get loading trucks in. So for the buildings that abut 11th Street, that will be able to serve those buildings. What we're proposing is access point on Fern Street to access the building at the southeast corner. That building is essentially, well, it's a triangle, so it's already an odd-shaped building. It has no backside to it. It fronts 12th Street, it fronts Fern Street, and we have a very pedestrian green ribbon that runs through there. So how do we solve the service challenge is a challenge for that site. So we think the most logical place is a driveway somewhere on Fern Street. And what we have shown here with the blue is where we know that we will not have access at this point in time. So further details as we get to 4.1, we'll figure out exactly where those access points go. While it looks like there might be big access, this can all be access, it will not be that. It would be no more than about 10% of the frontage would have access points along it. Let's go into the next slide. And the reason why we really believe we need that access point on Fern Street is because we don't want this scenario, right? If that building in the southeast corner doesn't have convenient loading access, then what happens is we end up with deliveries wanting to happen curbside. If we have a long circuitous connection to, say, 11th Street in some way, or it's got to come across that green ribbon, we just know from experience that it usually does not happen. So we want to have a facility on access off of Fern Street to get right into that southeast building. Let's show you what that could look like. So this is a hypothetical, what that could look like. 30-foot driveway is what is shown here. That will be detailed in the future. Again, it's not going to be that wide thing that we showed you on the previous drawing, it's going to come down to somewhere, once we design this building, we're going to have, we have an access point. Important things to point out about that access point. It would be head in, head out only. So we're not talking about any trucks backing across the public realm, right? So no trucks backing across sidewalk, no trucks backing across the bike lane. It would be head in, head out. So it would operate just as any other unsignalized driveway does that crosses the sidewalk or crosses a bike lane. Trucks would come in head first. They turn around internal. We haven't designed that yet. We know it can be done. We've looked at it, we've studied it, but that can be done internally. So all of that beep, 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 all that backing is inside the building. Pedestrians won't know that that's really happening unless they happen to be just along by the door as it's opening or closing, but that's all internal to the building. And we think that that's probably the most elegant way to really solve that without having that clog up Burn Street. I think I covered everything on that, so I'm going to turn it over. Yeah. Sure.
Great. I'm going to jump back into phasing here. Go to the next slide. And some of this was mentioned before, but we want to show you a little bit more detail about how we intend to keep that green ribbon link through the different phasing options. To just look quickly here at the existing site conditions. You see the land base 701, land base 601. The red is the property line. The blue are the extents of the existing below grade garage. The site was originally constructed with the below grade garage was in two different phases. So there's a natural bifurcation there vertically through the site, and that's informing the way that we broke down our land bay phasing. You can go to the next one. So we essentially have the two major land bays here, 701 and 601, with that split of 601 right along the green ribbon, which will allow us to sort of keep bring that online when either one of those phases happens. So we have a total of 3 total phases, which you see the most logical and probable breakdown of that, the existing condition on the upper left, land base 701, delivering that would include the below grade garage of that. The public plaza would deliver with that. And then whether the two diagrams on the bottom, whether it's 601A or 601B, that green ribbon link would be built in either one of those phases. A little bit more detail as we jump to the next slide. So this was mentioned a bit before, but if you imagine the development left coming 701, once again, the public plaza would be installed there. All the streetscape around that block would be in place, and then you see that interim pathway, which is provided via the existing pathway, would link you up to that corner of Fern and the interim 11th Street. So once again, it shows you what that condition would be after that first phase of 701. Next one here. One of the things that we wanted to sort of bring your attention to as we think about the interim 11th Street, which once again at 701, that portion would be built. But at this location, you can see a section cut at the bottom right, an existing visual. That ramp access is the only way to get to the below grade garage for the existing land base 601. So that would remain in place until those phases came online. Go to the next one. And then you see the full built out condition here. Once again, the green ribbon is in place. It connects to that node there at Fern and the interim 11th Street. All the streetscape is in place here. The interim 11th Street connects fully through the east to the west, and the bike lanes are in place on Fern. And then the other thing that came up before as we look at interim 11th Street, if you go to the next slide, once again, that interim 11th Street condition, which you see in the diagram in the upper right, that is the condition that would be in as part of the property on this side, but the full ultimate condition would depend on the neighboring North DEA site to be built in that final condition. And then one last slide. We recently received the preliminary plan for 12th Street, which it does begin to push, fairly significantly into that sort of north side of the street, the southeast or southwest side of the property, which we know is going to sort of push on that public plaza that we'll need to go through some, look at realigning or reconfiguring that, and we're committed to working with staff as that plan becomes finalized and making sure that we meet all those sector plan requirements.
Great. Do you all want to just finish up with community?
Sure. This will be real quick. Thank you. So Peter walked us through this a little bit. These obviously will not be determined and finalized until final site plan. But the good news is that unlike most sector plans, the Pentagon City sector plan tells you exactly what community benefits should be provided with each site and with each phase. So that actually makes it quite simple. You can see here, we pulled that information from the sector plan on this slide. Most of these are transportation related and have been discussed in depth, so I won't go through each of these. I'll note that the affordable housing is to be provided as 10% of the net new residential density. That is 10% of the residential units above and beyond what was already approved will be affordable. We've also got the sustainability commitments that we will make in accordance with the sector plan. On the next slide here, just a few pieces of information about the park infrastructure that's going to be provided here. The half-acre park that was discussed at the southwest corner of the property is inclusive of the portion of the green ribbon, or link as we call it, that goes through there. And then on the next slide, you can see that the green ribbon or link itself moves through the site, provides access all the way across, provides with a linear park experience, and above the podium will maintain a sight line through the site east-west. And that's all. We'll be available to answer any questions you all might have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. So we've got basically 3 buckets of things to talk about tonight. We got transportation, phasing, and community benefits. And then I think we'll see how much time we have for public comment. Yeah. So why don't we start with, we'll start with transportation. Folks have comments, questions.
Yeah, down here.
I see, so I'll go to Ben, who's online. But he had his hand raised.
Thanks for calling on me. Sometimes it's rough calling in virtually. I have a question and a comment around the transportation, specifically around the 11th Street interim, but kind of maybe gets into a bigger question. I'm interested in specifically, so the kind of comparable situation is what we're looking at in the Kimco site at 14th Street, which is a current interim street between Hayes and Grant. And I wouldn't say it's a very successful interim street. It's not a good experience from what I've seen for pedestrians or drivers. It's lacking a sidewalk on one side. The sidewalk's pretty minimal. And I'm kind of curious about how long an interim street this is going to be. I'm also suggesting do not look to that as an example, but I'm interested in the site, how long until the DEA potentially vacates and that site gets developed. And then that kind of led me to wonder, like, well, why, if the Kimco site, has Costco and that's not going to go away for at least 20 years or so, how does that kind of timeline look for DEA? And we're not really understanding what the north part of the site is going to look like. We're only doing a site, conditions for the broader, this half of the site. And I'm kind of interested in kind of why the decision was made only to do planning for the lower half of the site and how that kind of leads to the DEA intersects with that. So both kind of the much granular, 11th Street, how's that going to potentially compare to 14th Street with a kind of similar phasing situation? And then kind of the much bigger question, which could have been asked last time, but I didn't think of it, which is around the kind of why are we looking at just this half and not the broader half? Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. I'll try to answer this, although I think I'll probably need some help from some of our other folks here. In terms of this street and its timeline versus the Kimco site, the good news, I'm putting that in quotes, is that Costco's model is a lot more viable than the model of office buildings in the style of the DEA building. So I think it will be just a matter of time that once that lease runs out, It's likely an obsolete building that would be very difficult to lease up again, and so that would probably go away. The reason we planned only the southern portion of interim 11th Street was because the sector plan provided for certain building envelopes and where those edges would be. We did not control, or Brookfield does not control that portion of 11th Street that is north of their property line and actually aligns with the existing roads and property lines. I don't know if Dan or if Augie may know how long the lease is of the DEA building. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, they renewed their lease for 15 years, I think, in 2019.
Okay.
So
So 15 years from then.
yeah, it's 10 more.
And I don't know, Dan, if you're familiar, I'm not familiar with the Costco site other than what we've discussed, but if there are any differences between 14th, interim 14th Street there or 11th.
I'm not familiar enough to comment.
Yeah, fair
Have to
enough.
look into it though.
But I do think very doubtful that the DEA or anybody else will re-up to those buildings.
Sorry to clarify, does Brookfield own the DEA site or you don't own it?
No, they do not own it.
Oh, that's helpful. Okay, sorry, I was operating under that assumption. Okay, that
No,
makes a lot more sense.
Separate owner, great question, separate ownership.
Does own it.
It's Lincoln Properties.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused about, this is partly a mix of both phasing and transportation. And it's the loading docks, and the garage access. Because the 701, the western side is going to be developed first, but all the garages are going to be staying. Is that the idea? That you're not going to go all the way down to the bottom, but the existing garages, the sort of platform will continue to exist and you'll just build new buildings on top of that? Or, I mean, how's this working?
And so basically, it's like they're going to use the walls of the existing garage. They're going to essentially gun out the structure.
So the bathtub stays, but everything in it goes out.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because the columns.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just didn't understand because given the phasing, we've spent a lot of time on having the Fern Street entrance, but that's going to be way in the future. So those 4 entrances, really the 2 are on the 701 side. Those 2 would go first. And those are for both deliveries and for residential parking. Okay. Okay, now I understand that better. And I understand why there would be the 4 then along Fern rather than just 1 or 2 cuts. So I understand that. Design's going to make a big difference, but we're not there. That's SPRC law. So we'll definitely want to be looking very closely on that. Pickup and drop off, you definitely flag that as definitely an issue because I think we all agree that the deliveries, the double parking for deliveries, bike lanes really is a problem. It's been a problem in Crystal City for my whole time on the Transportation Commission, Planning Commission. So it's good to flag that right away. It's going to be hard, I think, to get pick up and drop off and actually go into that garage all the time because they're under their own time constraints. The UPS guy, the FedEx guy, it's like, I'm just in and out, yeah, drop off and go. So you're gonna have to figure a way to make it, and again, this might be an SPRC issue, to make it as easy as possible for those deliveries and obvious that they can pull in, pull out really timely. And the fact that you're saying it isn't going to be the beep up, they can go in on a circle, that's going to save them time too. Anything you can do with the design to make that happen, it's going to be really important to keep those streets free around it. Addition of the green ribbon, I agree with you to make sure that that is a low speed bicycles, and really we're talking about scooters and all the and e-bikes too, which tend to go way faster than bikes. So design of that, again, this might be an SBRC issue, but I'm flagging it down. That design of the green ribbon is going to be really important to make it that we don't have to enforce bikes going slow, that they basically don't have a choice but to go slow. You want it to be a natural enforcement rather than having somebody out there flagging. So keep that in mind in what we're trying to do here, even as when there's an interim green ribbon through. We don't want people to get used to being able to zip through. Because this is supposed to be a low contact green ribbon, an easy relaxing space rather than take your life in your hands. I'm guilty of going fast on a bike too, so I get it. So anyway, again, I think I've probably flagged more LRP, SPRC type issues, but I wanted the clarification, I guess, on how this is going to work.
And I'm gonna remember that the next time you're chairing an LRPC. It's Mr. Howell, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I might be a little bit guilty of this too, but just following up on the green ribbon point. You know, it is always problematic to have vertical speed bumps in this situation, but you can have horizontal speed bumps. You need to use organic shapes, and you need to have bump outs of a tree pit or something like that, which provides respite for pedestrians, and especially those in wheelchairs or strollers or whatever, just pausing to look at their phone and not getting off the road. But also it makes it a little bit more obvious that you're not going to go through there at anything but a slow pedal. And then I don't think you have to, you know, have a lot of signage and threatening stuff like that. On the garage, the slide, I don't think we need to go active, but the slide that had the outline of the current garage borders, it's virtually the whole parcel, right? So there is also a fair amount of vegetation right now. So that's all on deck, right? With, I don't know what the soil volumes are, but it's got to be pretty big because some of those trees are fairly large, right? So what I'm curious about is whether in the excavation of the current garage, any of that surface will be able to be preserved or protected. It looks like from the size and shape of the podiums and the towers that probably not much, but I'm just curious about whether you can speak to that at this point or until you get further into the design. I can't say much about it.
Yeah, I don't know if we're that far in that type of analysis. But I think this was mentioned before, it's given the foundation and the construction of the new park, you know, I think that there's definitely challenges with it. Did you wanna add
Keeping
something?
existing, you know, anything existing is gonna be challenging, right? I mean,
Right.
you're essentially gonna need to more or less open up the entire site.
Yeah.
You know, and the goal is to have vegetation on top, you know, put back, right? Or at least new, but in terms of existing, it's.
So I
challenging.
understand, and that's fair. It's just that whenever there happens to be an opportunity, especially for a high quality specimen, you know, it takes 40 years to grow a tree, right? So it's always good to keep one if you can, if it's on the borders, and I know that's difficult, and that kind of gets also to the issue of just staging and where the material storage, where the equipment sits, that kind of thing. When you're working on the current, on the, I guess 701 is going to be first. So when you're working on 701, where's that other stuff go? And, you know, if the other buildings are still being used, does that mean that some of that surface is going to be conscripted for that purpose? And, you know, that's a design feature too for the interim. It might be possible to fence off some of it, and then you can create, you know, a sort of green ribbon by just taking out some of that grass and putting in mulch and making some pathways that people can use to cut across the corner without, you know, without feeling like they're in sort of hardcore construction environment. And I know I'm taking up a lot of time, but the last thing Jim reminded me that the low underground loading heading in, coming out, I know they have to back up to something to unload, but would there also be an option for the, say, Fern Street in, 11th Street out, where the ins and outs aren't the same, and it might help the flow through of vehicles, both trucks and cars. I don't know if you're taking out all the guts anyway, it might be worth thinking about that as a design feature. so that you don't have, it might give you more options in terms of sort of a pullover and back up to an angled dock or something where you don't take up as much square footage inside to move the vehicles around. So I don't know. We're thinking about.
Other folks in the room on transportation? Yeah, go ahead.
If I can follow up on your question. There's a way to reuse or relocate any material. That would be great as well. Some of the 40-foot trees might not be able to be relocated easily, but some of the other specimens might. We have a park just around the corner. It's always in need of material. So that may be a way to also pick up some lead points.
Sharon Steiner.
Yeah, so I want to echo what Jim was saying, that, you know, when you're designing this kind of thing, you have to kind of make it, you know, not like, you know, people are going to cut the corners, you know, they're going to park things in the street, they're going to, you know, all those kinds of things. So I think designing it in a way that prevents that sort of thing from happening is smart. Now, if you could walk me through the kind of entrances again to this parking lot and how they're going to be phased, that would be helpful, a little confused on that.
Before we do that, I just, so we can move on with the conversation, are there any other, Pam, any other transportation comments not related to the parking garage?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll get you next, I'll get you both next, and then we'll, perfect. Go ahead, sorry.
Would it something to sweep over your shoulder?
Yeah.
Yes. So where are they?
So you want us to walk you through what each one of these are? Well, so, you know, first off, we,
Go to the screen just so everyone can see. Yeah. So, yeah, Dan, if you want to come with me. So that the idea here is that that would be a parking entry and a loading entry somewhere within that realm. You know, we won't exactly where that is till we can design the program here. And then with the 601A or 601B, there would be a parking. So any of the parking entries would happen on interim 11th Street. And just given the size of the development, having 2 access points is really tough. And then having the loading for 601A, and then it would just be that right in, right out loading here for the 601B.
Okay.
And go ahead.
Yeah, no, the other thing I would add is that the one thing is that the loading stays at the ground level. Right? So we're at loading at ground level. This is only for loading at the ground level. It's going to occur internal to the building here. We'll have loading at the ground level in these buildings. We just don't know exactly where those driveways will be yet. And that the parking will come in and then ramp down to the garage below. And then that ramp will serve the parking that's under this phase. So, and then it's even going to be a ramp that serves this phase, but that one hasn't been designed yet.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, because I know Commissioner Sarli, who's not here tonight, would love that you all are reusing the material. He's a big proponent of that. And then with the Pudo, just this is me thinking out loud. I mean, is there a way you could set up like a temporary, you know, sort of spot? And we have some of those like 15 parking spots around Crystal City. Is that something that is possible?
I think that that's something that we continue to work with staff.
Yeah, sure.
On one process, because there's we want to have parking where we can't have on-street parking, and then we try to figure out how do we manage that curbside.
Right.
If there's an opportunity for that.
Yeah.
But I think those are things that we understand. I think don't want what you saw earlier with all the trucks parking.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's always a challenge. But we want to try to figure out how to minimize that and try to discourage that from happening. Give it a place for it to happen.
Well, I noticed that in the 11th Street interim cross section, that a parking lane is also marked as Pudo. So I assume that you could use almost all of 11th Street as Pudo if you didn't use it for parking.
Yeah, I think that's the nice thing about parking lane, right? Is it's can be parking. You can take more of it if you need more of it for pickup drop off space, or it can be parking, right? And it's essentially the same real estate. It's just how do you manage it?
So I had a kind of a transportation I can put in this bucket.
Sure.
It could be either 12 or 1,500 new residents living in this, depending upon the program.
And then I looked at the Penn Place buildings and the Green Ribbon. That is an awful lot of people moving diagonally through the site to the plaza. When they get there, if you want to go to the metro, you've got a pretty ugly concrete staircase that goes down to the metro. And I mean, I know it may be kind of expensive, but it would be nice to get an escalator that goes down. I do not like taking that staircase down. I'm an older person, it's not great on my knees. But I mean, it may not be needed now, but when all the development that this is going to support comes in, you're going to force people to hit that plaza and then cross 12th Street where the Metroway is to get to the Metro entrance. So it's a county facility, I think, the stairwell. And I think that it ought to be on somebody's radar, and maybe we should be looking at improving that. That's my transportation comment.
Very good. Go ahead, Pam.
All right, good. Thank you, Jeffrey. And think about that when you design that corner, that potentially there might be an elevator. It's a really important one. I have questions about 11th, 12th, and Hay Street. The comment on 11th Street is it might be 10 years or more before you actually are able to build out the entire thing. That makes me very sad. I'm very concerned that there's no real protected bike facilities going east-west, and there won't be any, at least for 10 years, give or take. And I guess you're encouraging people to go either to Army, Navy, or T, and those are significant distances to go. And if there's any way to do something better, that'd be good. And I'm saying this as a pedestrian because if there are no good bike facilities, they have a right to be on the sidewalk. They can be on the green ribbon probably as well. And it's definitely a conflict for people like me. So as much as you can do something that will really help the cyclists and speed riders, that we should. That's my comment on 12th, 11th. On 12th, you have a preliminary drawing of the transitway. Do we know if it's going to be going down the middle of the street?
Yes.
Okay, good. That has implications for everything. And that'll be continuously down the street from Hayes over to about Eaves or beyond Eaves.
If whoever has it in their presentation can pull it back up, and I'll just talk to it. I suspect I'm the only one that has it memorized in my brain. Yeah, so just to talk about it a little bit, I know we kind of flipped by it, but what's going on? So this is a county project. This is the county project. This is something that will not be built with the Brookfield. It's not Brookfield responsibility. However, we are asking Brookfield to make sure that their design accommodates this, so it doesn't preclude our ability to do the ultimate design. So what we are looking at here, whoever's screen this is, maybe you can help me out with your little hand. So we have a median station. It's that kind of ellipse in gray. So this is going to be the station. It will be in the middle of the street. So you will have one eastbound general purpose lane. That's the lane that your hand's on right now. Then you will have one eastbound bus only lane, which is that red lane just north of where the stop is. So that will be eastbound. It is red because that is going to be buses only. This is part of, you're probably seeing throughout the county now, we're painting red in various areas, which is bus only to try and help that visibility for individuals. And then in the westbound direction, you'll see at Hayes Street, we have two travel lanes. Those are general purpose lanes. And then if you look at Fern Street, you'll see there is the beginning of a red solid lane that then has some dashes, again, in that westbound direction. So what has to happen is that bus will be in that that lane, and then they will need to transition to the far right lane, which is that right turn lane, to make the right to go up Hayes, where you see some red striping shown, and then there will be another transitway stop there. And so this design is something, again, we're probably at about 10 or 15%. But at this point, we believe this is the number of travel lanes. This is the general layout. We are looking at that center station. We've had some discussions based on that new development that was just completed on the Pentagon Center site. So are there going to be some tweaks? Probably. Do we need to do some more work around that metro stair facility to make sure it looks better and the ramps work and everyone can get through? Of course. But again, for the PDSP level, this is where we are.
That's very helpful. And between the bus stop on Hayes, is that going to be super long, like the one on 12th Street or by Crystal Drive?
That is correct. At the current time, it is anticipated there will be shelters with the median and with this one on Hayes. And it would look basically like that one we do have that we recently completed on 12, that long bridge.
And all of these things are yet another reason why your corner is so important. There are tons of people. This is going to be served by so many different bus systems. And the more you can support it, it's going to be better. So, that and bikes. And Fudo is a problem for Fudo. It is already a problem on 12th Street. If you go down here, they're double parked. I don't know who these people are. And I think you might have to eliminate regular parking. There's such a huge need for Fudo there.
So when you look at this design, what you'll see again, this is the ultimate design. There actually is no parking on the north side.
Great.
And there is minimal parking on the south side. It's mainly closer to Fern Street.
Yeah.
You can see a little bit closer to the right where there isn't the hatching. Yes, right there. So that's the parking that we have proposed. But everything from there to East Street is not parking. It's all just straight up.
And so there's no Fudo parking there either. Or some of it might be Fudo parking.
Some of the parking on the south side, maybe pick up and drop off. Again, the county controls the right of way and what the curb space is used for. So once this goes into effect, we'll figure out what makes the most sense in terms of timing and signage, and then revise it as needed.
Thank you. And my final point is about clear zone sidewalk width and the width of the green ribbons. I know that you're following the minimum requirements in the sector plan, and I beg you to expand it as much as you can. There's going to be a ton of people coming through here. Thank you.
Transportation related?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Diagram.
Great.
So that's
Oh, can you bring back the bus diagram?
Thank you, Joanne.
So the red is the bus lane, correct? And the buses are there, and I see them pulling up with the center stop, and then they turn right, and there's another bus stop right there. Is that correct?
It's different directions. So there are two bus stops. The bus stop on 12th Street serves the eastbound. Peter's going to be our bus.
Okay.
Correct.
And this goes to Crystal Drive.
Correct. It's a little counterintuitive with the bus on the far side because most people you naturally think with the bus stop on curbside, then that's where the bus is. But yes, with the eastbound lane on the far side of the median station, it's a little not what folks are used to seeing.
Yeah, you're right. That's what confused me.
Yeah. You're not the only one.
Bus turning across for cars.
Right.
I put myself up real quick and just associate myself with the comments that Pam made and Jim as well, to pick up and drop off. It is sort of I'm breaking the rules. It is sort of a county issue and design issue. But I've been planning mission for almost a year and been involved. And I've seen that. I think that we do a really good job as a community in working with applicants to deliver parking solutions. I think we disagree about ratios, but I think we generally do a pretty good job of parking solutions inside buildings and things like that. We, like many communities, have not really figured out pick up and drop off, and it just so jeopardizes our pedestrian goals, our bike goals. It makes folks who otherwise might be excited about new development and opportunities hostile, because parking is just sort of the bane of all of our existence to an extent, and it certainly is a negative to kind of our overall experience sometimes. So I really would like us to maybe lean into that, thinking about pick up and drop off and less of surface parking, which I think we have enough parking solutions presented here. I think we can think about maybe reorienting some of that public space. Okay, with that, we're gonna move on to phasing, which Michelle and Tommy already got into. We will, we'll touch on phasing if folks have comment questions on that. And I'm gonna take a minute because I've neglected to ask if there's anybody, I don't know that there's anybody on the phone.
I think we have one caller, but I don't think it's
I don't think it's a
sufficient. I haven't seen any hands out.
Nope, and I'm not seeing any hands online. Not seeing any hands in the room for phasing. We sort of talked about that already to an extent. All right. Going once, going twice, we will move on to community benefits. I have one question. I think I know the answer to it, but I'm gonna, it's a question for Ked. If you can just, for the edification of the group, explain, like, in practical terms, how the affordable housing within the PDSP, how that would practically work.
Sure.
What that would look like, because I think folks see 10% of new density. I think there's some confusion.
Happy to, yeah. So I guess the first thing that I'd note is that all of these developments, as well as everyone you always see, is subject to the what we call the base contribution that's in the ordinance. So that the base density would be required to provide community benefits in the form of either cash contribution or on-site units. Where what the county considers to be extraordinary community benefits comes in is on the bonus. In other words, the amount above that baseline. And so in the prior zoning entitlement that was applicable to this property, the Pentagon City PDSP that a lot of you are probably familiar with, there was a certain level of density allocated to individual sites, individual blocks actually throughout the Pentagon City area. And that is also the case here, where a portion of the density through the overall PDSP has been allocated to this particular site.
Yeah, it's like 600,000 square feet, something like that.
Thereabouts. So what Commissioner Berkey is talking about is that the 10% of new residential as affordable would be levied on that difference between that base or 600,000 square feet and then the total that we get to. So there are several layers and several buckets, so it can be a little confusing, but that's how it will ultimately work out in the final site plan process.
And that's the base contribution. So we're skipping to that as opposed to the regular. Obviously, you get a site plan, you get a cash contribution, or you get, on site.
Right.
And here, we're not doing that. I'm just contextualizing it. We're instead going to this scheme.
We're talking about this scheme for the portion of bonus. I mean, I think we would still be subject to
Still subject to the base for the rest of the site. Okay.
Is it units or square feet?
It's square feet.
It's square feet, but then it gets translated into units based on,
Do we have any estimate of what the minimum, maximum number?
Kind of did a backup.
Yeah, I don't know that we've run
but it is going to be significant because what they're entitled to now is about roughly 600,000 square feet. What we're asking for now is well over 1 million square feet of total,
Well,
not all of that.
In the 701, it's about 1,000 residences there. And so how many of those are the bonus density residences that the 10% would do you know approximately? Or is it
I don't.
the size of the unit?
Yeah, it depends on the size of units, and it also depends on what our program ends up being, because, yeah, we're thinking it's probably going to be heavily residential at this point, but who knows? A user may come in and say, I want to be next to Amazon HQ2 and take down the whole southeast building or such that it exists. Take down the whole southeast building and we have a build to suit. And then, 2/3 or a third of the project is office. So no, we haven't done any kind of calculation on that because we just don't know.
Be able to follow up on that. So am I correct that this isn't going to be a 5/2?
The heights are maximums. I don't think that's the intent, especially given the amount of infrastructure work that's going to be done associated with it.
I would think that.
Tough, yeah.
And I'm sort of hoping that. The reason I'm raising this is because the past few projects we've seen at Planning Commission have been 5/2 that have not taken advantage of the density on the site.
That's right.
They've been way, way lower than what could be built there. And I was concerned that I don't want that to happen here. I mean, this is a site that cries out for as much density as you can put on it. I encourage you to take full advantage it is so transit rich. There's so much there that can support a huge number of people. Very,
I actually think it's all active.
right. Exactly.
Yeah, I want to second what Jim's saying. I think this is one of those sites where it's literally the sky's the limit. But if I can tease out the community benefits page, there were a lot of things on that page, and we can split out what are site amenities, what are site plan conditions, what are things you need to build just because it's 20. Sure, you're good builders, and what are the community benefits?
Yeah, so I'll press come up to the screen here to take a look. So it's a good question, and look, it's one that's not defined as to what's a community benefit versus what's something that you would just have to build no matter what.
Yeah.
There are, and you definitely cannot read the text here. There he is. I don't care how big.
Get her down and talk about, I can read that just fine.
Okay, well, there are in the sector plan, and it actually makes it a lot easier in this sector plan than others because it says, these are the community benefits that are going to be provided at Thornton's. And that way, it's easy to tell exactly what needs to be provided in exchange for the additional density. So this is perfect right here. Community benefits to enable higher density redevelopment should include green ribbon, public plaza, half an acre, public access, separated bicycle facility, 10% committed affordable housing. So there will be other things that we have to do that every site plan has to deal with, things like TDM that are standard site plan conditions, things like bringing the sidewalks up to the standard that the county has. So I would say, it will all be negotiated eventually, but I think where we're going to land is these are what constitute the extraordinary community benefits in exchange for bonus density, while we're still held to the same very high level standards of all Arlington County projects that you see through the site plan conditions.
But are there any community benefits that are not on site?
Probably not. Are you suggesting like improvements offsite or a cash?
Improvements offsite, cash contributions to a new library, contributions to upgrading the park in the neighborhood, additional density to do things for the community that are not necessarily for the site?
I don't believe so. I don't believe any of these are identified in the sector plan. And so we have gone with kind of the language of the sector plan and said, we're going to provide what's there. Part of it too was, as we worked through this process, we thought it was important to be able to be very transparent and consistent with what we were going to provide so that folks could look at this document and say, okay, here's what's going to happen. Boom, boom, boom. We can actually look at these. So we negotiated these pretty heavily in terms of what the project could bear in its pro forma, right? What we'd be able to actually functionally provide and actually make the project happen so that we didn't overburden it like some projects you see that never go forward because they're too pricey. So I don't anticipate that there would be any offsite benefits associated with this.
Well, except for the affordable housing could presumably, depending upon what, the applicant may choose.
No, that's a very good point. I mean, the base,
The
again,
base, right.
The base affordable contribution is one that I put in that, like, all site plans have to do it.
Right.
And that's
And our preference is that it's on site as well.
Right. Well, then there will be on site for the bonus for certain, but then that's the base can be either cash contribution or on site. And you're right, Eric, that goes into the AHIF fund that can be drawn on for projects throughout the county. So that is a countywide.
Yeah, but it's for every. I saw Ben has his hand raised online.
I actually wanted to go back to the comment and connect it to community benefits around these stairs down to the metro. I remember there's a history there where those stairs were not funded by the county at some point, and then maybe, I want to say 10 years ago or so, they opened up because the county devoted budget to them. But they're not open for the full operating hours of the metro. I think they close at like 7 or 8 p.m. And I'm wondering if the, potential plaza improvements would potentially, I think that does need improvement, especially when that site, those stairs could get more use under this redevelopment, and whether the plaza improvements could the funding for the plaza improvements, community benefits would potentially be able to at least, open those for longer, if not make them a little nicer.
That's the second bullet.
So right, the second bullet, so Ben, to your point, that is an easement that is owned by WMATA. WMATA has the easement. So I don't know that they will allow or what the process is to like work with them, or if it's something that has to be in their budget. You know, I don't know if they accept contributions or advice. Being WMATA, I doubt they listen to many folks other than themselves, but that's one of the difficulties we've got here with the overlapping interest. To your point on the second bullet, that is the half-acre space that we're providing. And because that WMATA easement is in there as kind of like a hole in the donut, we're providing a half-acre exclusive of that area. So the half-acre plus that area. We can't do anything to it because it's WMATA easement, but we're saying we'll still give you that half-acre for all the space that we can control. But I don't know, Joe, I don't know if you guys deal with WMATA, you know, on things like that. I imagine they kind of do whatever they want.
So we do deal with WMATA. We partner with WMATA. WMATA partners with us. The Transaway is a perfect example. That is a WMATA run route. It is something we do work with them. You know, all kidding aside, I will say, you know, just to remind folks, we are making the improvements on the south side of 12th Street, east and west side of 8th Street. We are doing the elevator project on the mall side, so the west side of 8th Street. We also have the recent elevator project that was completed on the east side of Hayes Street. So my take right now is putting another escalator on that north side of 12th Street is probably not something that we, from a county perspective, are looking for actively to complete. You know, if you say Brookfield says they want to do that, you know, obviously we'll listen to you, but it would have ramifications in terms of space, cost, timing, the public plaza. So a lot of ramifications to the space. I need to check on what the hours are and ownership. I know we have a lot of conversations. I know people in the county know those answers. I just don't know off the top of my head what they are. And it's something that we can talk about more during site plan. But in my mind right now, it's independent of the site plan because it's not something Brookfield controls. I don't think you all maintain it. I don't think you own it. So it's something that would be more a county discussion.
I hope no one from WMATA is listening. Very nice people.
WMATA's under new management. Randy Close.
All right, do we have one more, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just on community benefits. And maybe this is a little bit of a segue to the SPRC topics, but we've seen a number of different diagrams of the podiums and the towers, and they seem to morph a lot through because they're diagrams for different purposes, and it doesn't really matter yet anyway. But it is a question of, you know, what the size and shape of those things are going to be. And I just wanted to put in a pitch right now under the category of community benefit, that the negative space is a community benefit. It's not just what you build, it's the space that's left over when you build it. And that means the airspace, that means the light direction and angles, that means the airflow, which given the green ribbon, that's, you know, there are things to do in the designing of it that can make it especially appealing, especially interesting, and more or less biophilic no matter what you plant, because it's about the nature of the space, not just what you stick on it later. And so I think that I just wanted to put that on the table before we get to the first sort of major design stage, as something that will actually be the most fundamental in creating the character of the place. And given what you're right next door to, and given what we hope might happen across Hayes eventually, you know, I think it's just a wonderful opportunity to do a little more creative thinking about the shapes of those towers, about the, you know, about the use of the podium rooftops as planted terraces for retail or for whatever, business meetings, I don't know. But to create that sense of immersion in a place that can feel very personal and unhurried, but also sort of open and clear and that kind of which in a dense area, that's really important. So I'm just gonna throw that out there now from a design perspective. Oh, sorry. Oh, I could shoot myself if I forgot this. The green building program standard is 8 to 36 for bird-friendly class. But I think you really should try to look at 0 to 50 for the podiums, if that's what they're going to be, and another 36 above the terraces. The Met Park horticulture team has told me that they're getting a lot of bird strikes above the terraces.
Interesting.
And if you look on a website called Birdcast, last night, 114,000 birds flew across Arlington County. The migration is just starting. I've seen in the millions just flying across. And if they get here when dawn starts to happen, they're going to be so famished from flying 125 to 200 miles overnight. They're going to go after any vegetation that might hold food. And that's where we run into the little complexity of urban nature. But the winning thing is that a lot of types of bird-friendly glass new technologies are also more energy efficient. I know you're already looking at that. So, okay.
Thank you. All right, I think we'll move to wrapping up and probably get out of here early. I don't think there's any major, I'm looking at Peter, but I don't think there's any major issues of discussion.
No,
left on this
I
project.
really don't think, just, a final revised set of plans and design guidelines that we can bring forward to the, and we've already been, I think we can bring it forward maybe to the May Planning Commission and.
Okay, so can we take a look and see,
I know Bernie Byrne did have one.
Yeah,
public comment.
I thought him answer, there's no one in the room, I believe, for public comment. Let's take a look online and see.
So we have Mr. Byrne
Okay,
be first speaker, and then we have Ashley from the National Landing Bid who'd also like to take second. And so far, that's all I have.
okay, we can do 3 minutes because we have time.
Can we have some final comments, Stu?
Yeah, that's fine. What
Before,
I appreciate you mentioning that. So why don't we go ahead, if anybody has any final comments, then we'll go ahead and do that. Then we'll do public comment and then we'll just talk quick next steps and we can get out of here before 9. Does that sound good? All right, good.
Thank you. I wanted to reiterate that. And that was my idea the last time. I really like the idea of the residential building being open. You get the sun, you get people going through, and it's just so much better than creating other thing. Towers, whatever, all this other stuff is good, but keep it as open as possible. It's really going to increase how people enjoy the space. Thank you.
Anyone else? This is a great project, and I'm excited to see a 4.1 application hopefully come the county's way soon. All right, we will move on to public comment. So I guess we can go with Mr. Byrne first. And you have 3 minutes, Mr. Byrne, whenever you're ready. Oh, we cannot hear you, Mr. Byrne. Still cannot hear you. So you might want to either call in or change your microphone.
Okay, okay now?
Yep. Yes. Yep. We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I turned off my settings while I was out. Okay, I have I'm what I'm talking about is now is that open space, which is a planned open space at which is called a plaza at the 0.5 acre open space at 12th Street in Hayes, which you saw at the southwestern corner of the area. This shouldn't be a plaza. We have already too much pavement in Pentagon City, too little green space. As you well know, and you see the applicant showed a picture of it, and there was only a little bit of green space around the periphery. In the center of it was, you had an elliptical area that was basically pavement or plaza, whatever. Well, that is probably based on an old sector plan that was developed before the biophilia movement came around. The county passes biophilia resolution. As you probably know, most people would rather have green spaces rather than a pavement, especially in a dense area like Pentagon City or any of the metro corridors. So therefore, I appreciate if you could make a suggestion to the applicant that this be primarily a park, not a plaza. And it would have plantings of various pollinator plants, some trees, things like common milkweed in it, that for monarch butterflies, for honeybees. But this really needs to be biophilic and not just another piece of pavement. There's already enough around. There's that green ribbon, which you really look at the green ribbon closely. It really is mostly pavement, not green. So this is just another example of it. You just need to recommend that that area be a park, not a plaza, and with a lot of green space and pollinator plants, things like that. Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Adam, who's our next speaker?
We have Ashley from the National Landing Grid.
Floor is
Hi,
yours.
everyone.
Go ahead. Yep.
Hi, everybody. Great. Ashley Labadie. I'm the Planning and Economic Development Senior Manager with the National Landing Bid. So just on behalf of the bid, I'd just like to express how excited we are to see this process coming along and the thoughtful consideration of the Pentagon City Sector Plan goals. My question is related to phasing. So this might get a little technical, so forgive me if this is not the most appropriate time, but I do think it's something I would like to know in the future. Just how would demolition of existing 601 work with redevelopment phasing, considering 601A and 601B could be separate phases? So what would occur on A or B in the interim?
So I think I'm just going to step in here as chair. I think that that's probably a question for the site plan review committee and if and when there's a site plan application. But I would assume the applicant would be more than happy to also reach out to the bid offline and kind of talk through what that sort of looks like for the neighborhood and for the community.
I would say in similar circumstances, we would probably expect some sort of interim landscaping, at least, not expensive, permanent landscaping, but something that's attractive to the area temporarily while awaiting that final phase of development.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, so Peter outlined next steps, which will be there'll be some amendments to the PDSP.
Yeah, it's the Pentagon overall, but because this is the sort of PDSP level, not site plan level, we're going to amend conditions of the Pentagon City phase development site plan to permit this proposed development to happen. And it will have conditions relating to expected phasing, expected improvements with each phase, expected community benefits with each phase. And we're probably going to go to the Transportation Commission, Planning Commission, and County Board, and they'll approve the amendment to the phase development site plan. And then that will tee up, it'll be the developer's court to whether or not they submit a 4.1 plan for their first phase.
Great.
Which will go through the usual process.
SPRC. Yeah, we'll see you all then. All right. Well, that being the case, then this LRPC is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
No, that's pretty good. Look forward to seeing some photos on the.
I hope so.